Hello everyone, welcome to the LSI F1.5 EU Championship for the third time again. We are live streaming and this time it is LSI F1 instead, and it's Verf who's currently on top when we last checked, and it looks like they're going to go for another pole position currently with round 11 getting 10 pole positions. 9 pole positions this season. Can they make it 10 across the line? It's going to be a .554 from Jericho Willis with the .807. The only two drivers to be in the 7-second lap time range right there. Brilliant effort right there from those guys. It's going to be another pole for the Sauber team. A front row lockout between the two championship rivals. A brilliant job right there. Verf takes pole position once again, this time for the sprint. Jericho Willis in P2. It's Barrel, Bonkers, PJ, Peanuts and Pursoon, the bottom three being reserve drivers. We are waiting for Terence to join us a little bit later on. That's the rest of the grid. We'll see you in a second for the sprint race. Ready, hold, go! Who's going to get it into turn one? Jericho Willis on the inside line. It was the benefit to Charlie or Sir Max on yesterday. It's not going to be the benefit in the end as Verf gets such a good launch and will take it to P1 in through the next few corners. Jericho Willis sits in P2 and it's Barrel who's got pressure from Bonkers returning since 2021. Wasn't able to make the move off the line, but is still close behind and ready to go racing. Oh, the Ferrari goes off. They come back on track, still staying ahead, and they'll stay where they are. It's Peanuts now to the outside line who swoops through, and they've got Pursoon and PJ all trying to give it a go, but no move right there will be done. A big lock up on the rear end it looked like, or just a big slide on the kind of lateral forces there for Bonkers, and Pursoon's going to try and find their way through if they can do. Now they've got 3 higher tier drivers around them, 2 behind them, 1 in front of them, all starting with the letter P with their name, and they are going to go pretty pacey, that's for sure. That's Pursoon though, sending it a little bit too hard over the curb, allowing PJ to go through, and Bonkers will lose out to that one. That's a little bit of a shame right there, unfortunately, but Bonkers, the race is not over yet and there's still a long way to go in it. Verf leads the way, P1 at the moment. Jericho Willis sits right behind within DRS range and will get that DRS. You see it open there on the rear, and then it's Peanuts who's just been overtaken, or just overtaken Barrel. Barrel sits behind at the moment. Of course, a higher tier driver in front of them still means that they'll finish P3 for the EU drivers. If they finish in this order, then they've got PJ right behind them trying to close up and get that DRS so they can fight with Pursoon. They're bringing Bonkers along with them in that battle as well. 1.5 seconds slow to Peanuts and Jericho Willis. These two fought each other quite closely back in Silverstone, where Peanuts managed to take his first win in a long time on track. 407 days it was in the end. Now, is Peanuts going to be able to catch back up to a DRS train up in front? Yesterday, not in the sprint, but in the main race, they suffered from the DRS train up in front of them. They still managed to get a P2 in the sprint in LSI F1. With no DRS right now, it's going to be virtually impossible to compete against Verf and Jericho Willis, who at Stend absolutely massively. Incredible stuff right there. It's going to be Barrel and Peanuts closest together and looking to switch to make moves. The Ferrari wants to have a go. They're going to go through on turn 4. Nice and simple. They're going to not lose any time from either driver. It's PJ that drops behind Bonkers and Pursoon. Maybe an issue there for the Austrian in the Aston. 1.7 seconds away. Not entirely sure what was going on. I would look at the tyres, but I think we're going to get exactly the same thing for everyone. No, we're not. Absolutely incredible. I was not ready for that. A big surprise right there, as we've got softs for Bonkers and PJ. Now, I do want to have a quick look at something, and I do apologise for the delay, but I am going to have to quickly cut away unless we're going to see an overtake here from Peanuts and Barrel. I don't think we're going to see an overtake between the two race leaders. They will settle their positions accordingly. It's going to be Peanuts who's absolutely flying into the first corner. It's going to be Jericho Willis who's 6 tenths behind and not going to be in a position to make an overtake. I don't see Barrel going for a move again immediately. They will back off. So we'll be back in a few moments. And we are back once again. Lovely stuff. Not too short of a breakaway. It's Peanuts who's trying their best to hold on to the cars ahead, but with the DRS train that they've got going, it's really difficult to make anything of it. They have got Barrel to go with them to try and help, but Barrel losing the rear on the final few corners, really struggling up through turn 13. They can't afford to do that too much. They will overheat those tyres if they're not careful. But they have got a lot of overspeed. It's going to be hard to the inside line as Jericho Willis is right there. Peanuts stays ahead of Barrel. There's no switching up. Pursoon is just about within DRS range, it looks like. Do they get that rear wing open on the pink and blue car? They do so. And now they're going to be back into this battle. It's Peanuts who's on the inside line and allows the Ferrari to go through by turn 4. Bonkers 4 seconds away. Struggling a little bit with a mistake or so, but they've got PJ right behind them for some company to make it a bit more exciting. Good to see the Brit back into racing in LSI. They've just got to try and get themselves bled back into the scene, and they'll be good to go. So we'll be patient with Bonkers. It's just brilliant to see a familiar face return once again, this time under the EA badge. Jericho Willis and Verf who are leading the way. There's going to be no pit stops here. It is outright to the end on these medium tyres. It's going to be a harder job for Bonkers and PJ on those soft wall compound tyres, but it's not going to be impossible. We've got Peanuts going for that move. Are we going to see Jericho and Verf switch? I don't think we will. We might see Barrel have a go. Would they want to do it now they've got a bit of pressure from Pursoon? Realistically, they don't need to worry about the higher tier drivers, but it depends on whether they realise the cars around them are higher tier drivers or not. Because they don't actually need to fight these cars or stress at all. Even though they have got a bit of pressure from in front and behind, it can be a little bit daunting. As you've got Pursoon incredibly close, just getting himself back into this groove. They have raced recently, not too long ago. They weren't able to complete the rest of the race due to an issue with their ankle after an injury back in a couple of weeks ago. So Suzuka, they did race just for a moment in the F1.5 tier, but had to retire the car in the end. Or was that no, sorry, it was the main Grand Prix. It was like LSI F1. So they missed the main Grand Prix. They only raced until the end before the restart. The first restart came about. That's another switch. And that is Barrel, 2.3 seconds behind. Currently, working really nicely here with the higher tier drivers to slipstream train this one along. It's going to be Pursoon trying to go for the double overtake. Peanuts doesn't really want to have anything of it, and Pursoon has to back off. Peanuts now on a compromised line, trying to attack, to defend on Barrel there. Had to attack Barrel to defend from Pursoon. Pursoon wasn't able to get through. Now they are going to lose the other cars a little bit more because of that, and now Peanuts is trying to fight. So all this time that they've tried to maintain and actually gain back on the top two, they've all of a sudden just decided to start losing it all, and now Peanuts goes for the move. I think they got a bit shaken up by Pursoon on the attack, and now they're going to have to back off. It's very close right there. Oh, Pursoon's trying to find their nose where it doesn't really belong, and Barrel does push him off a little bit, and Pursoon will have to try and find another way through. But that was very, very tight. They've all got DRS and they can continue on their way, but that was a bit too close for comfort. It's going to be Jericho Willis leading the way of the Grand Prix on lap 8 out of 12, and all of a sudden the laps are closing in and the end of the race is looming. DRS is available for Verf, but they're still going to stay behind. They're going to try and size up a move and make sure that they get the right move. Now, onto that final lap. You can either make the move into the first corner, you can make it into turn 4 that we've just gone through there, or you can make it up to the line on DRS. Up to the line is risky, but very rewarding, and it can be quite powerful. Turn 1 is the easiest one. Turn 4 is really where you kind of go, you know what, I might have actually secured it. Because if you're able to get close enough into turn 1, but not actually go for the overtake, maybe even compromise your opposition into going for an awkward line as they come out of turns 2 and 3, then you can get a really nice move into turn 4. You've got a middle sector to try and break away, or just save the battery, and then you can power out all the way up to the line. That being said, Nivo did lose up to the line twice yesterday in a row with the sprint and the main race, so maybe if they've been watching that, they'll be able to figure out that it might not be a bad idea to wait for the line. But it really depends on the setup, it depends on the driver's preference and their situation, and currently Verf is leading. Jericho sits behind once again, and because of the DRS detection point being in the middle of turn 2 onto 3, it means that you are able to get DRS immediately back again. So unless you've got a really good advantage after you've overtaken into turn 1, it's going to be possible for the car behind to re-overtake you. So that's something that you have to worry about if you do overtake into turn 1. It's the easiest overtake, but it's also very risky because you can get re-overtaken, and not only into turn 4, but maybe up to the line. We're lap 9 out of 12, and these guys are about to start lap 10. You can see the Ferrari, the Alpine, and the Mercedes all further behind. They've switched up positions. Now we've got the red car leading the way. We've got the Alpine sat in P2 in the train and in prime position to make an overtake here. We've got Peanuts, who was leading for a moment and leading by 8/10 just a couple of laps ago from the red car, and instead it's completely switched up. Oh, that's very, very close. The only change we'd need to see a complete order shuffle would be Pursoon ahead, and that would be a complete opposite. It's DRS and a lot of momentum for Pursoon to the outside line into turn 4. Slotting in goes Barrel, and Peanuts can't do anything about it. What will Pursoon do with this now? They're ahead of these guys. 3.9 seconds to the top 2. They're not really going to be thinking about them because they know that they're not going to really be gaining that much time relative to the other cars. That was bonkers actually into the pit lane on that medium tyre, so they weren't willing to take this off to the end of the Grand Prix. PJ, however, on the other hand, is taking this tyre to the end of the Grand Prix, but you can see how slippy it is as soon as we change over to their onboard. It wasn't looking ideal, and they're going to have a lot of understeer through this part of the circuit. But we go back to the front runners, and your race leaders are starting the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix, lap 11 out of 12, and they really size up a move. They really try and save the battery. These guys have got a bit of a more complicated situation to deal with, as they don't want to be P3 in the train. They also don't want to make any contact, as Peanuts has broke a little bit too late to defend from Pursuit behind, ended up tapping the rear end of Barrel. That's compromised his run, and it's allowed Peanuts to go to the outside line. I don't think Peanuts wants to go for the move, but they do go for the move in the end, and it's going to be Barrel taking that P2 spot. And you know what? I don't think Barrel's really that disappointed with being P2 in the train at this point. I think they're quite happy. Will that work out though? I don't know. Will Pursoon try and go for a move sooner rather than later? Will they go for a move at all, as they are the higher tier driver? We shall see. But that's PJ having a mistake. It's going to be Bonkers catching up and overtaking in the end. But it's all about these two, as they will start the final lap of the Grand Prix. Verf leads the way, 1 point difference for finishing ahead or behind. Jericho Willis is in the attacking position. It's under attack for Verf. It's not going to be the move. Verf doesn't react. He knew that Jericho was going to back out of it. DRS, ERS. ERS was being saved all through turn 2, but onto 3. It's being blasted by the Sauber car, but the McLaren will power through. Will there still be another opportunity? Up to the line for Verf. Can they keep it together? Can they keep it composed? We're going to see side-by-side moments here with Peanuts and the Ferrari. Oh, and there's contact. Peanuts almost goes into the wall, and Pursoon will flow through. Barrel managed to get around the outside. That was a brilliant effort from them. Pursoon has now got pressure. They have to go defensive from Peanuts, and they're trying to stay ahead as best as they possibly can. Surely there's not going to be an opportunity for Peanuts to go through at this point. It will be done and dusted. But will it? Verf has got one more opportunity to go for the move. DRS, ERS is to a maximum. Will they get the run to the very last moment? Is it going to be a drag race, or has that McLaren done enough? It's going to be close. Oh, it's going to be incredibly close, but it's going to be Jericho Willis who takes victory in the sprint, and it's going to be Pursoon who gets ahead of Barrel in the end to take it P3 on track. Barrel gets P3 for the EU drivers, and Peanuts will go P5. Bonkers is going to finish P6, and they will finish P4 for the EU drivers, and it'll be PJ behind. We're all over the place on the commentary there. I do apologise for the slip-ups, but it was pretty exciting, and we'll make sure we're more prepared for the main race as we will have a few minutes in between, and then a longer qualifying session to get warmed into the main race. Lovely stuff. There's the preview. That is Jericho Willis taking another victory. This time it's a sprint race. And that is Verf to P2, with Pursoon getting P3 and driver of the day. Brilliant effort there from the Belgian driver. Jericho Willis takes victory. It's Verf in P2, Pursoon, Barrel, Peanuts, Bonkers and PJ finishing off the order. We go through all the results just in case, and we'll be back for the main qualifying session. We'll see in about 10 minutes time. Hello everyone and welcome back to LSI F1.5 EU Championship. We're today for the main qualifying session now of the Brazilian Grand Prix. We've only got a few minutes left on the clock, so sorry for the delay. Jericho Willis has just gone and set his most recent lap time, a 7.531 behind his rival, exactly a tenth behind Verf at the moment, who once again tops the times in qualifying. Only been beaten this season once by Frantic at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Other than that, Verf has been the top dog on the first start of any event, whether that be a sprint event or a main Grand Prix in qualifying. They're looking to try and do that again. They're looking to try and get 10 out of 11 poles out of these 11 races so far this season. It is impressive, very impressive. Jericho, he's also done a very good job as well. You have to give them credit for what they've achieved, because Jericho Willis, well, they've turned up and they've qualified mostly, for the most part, P2 quite often as well. So both Jericho Willis and Verf have done absolutely brilliant jobs. Now we've got everybody into the pit lane, except from one car who's now making it back out on track, as everybody gets ready for their final laps of the session. Verf is the only one. We're going to try and go on board with them, but it seems like we're getting a very long delay until we then get them on the camera. There is Verf, ready to go for the final opportunity here in qualifying in Brazil. And we'll see what can be done. We've got Verf in P1, Jericho in P2, Barrow in P3. We've got Terence, who joins us now for the main qualifying and main race. And then we have Bonkers, who of course returns to LSI since 2021, their last race. They got P13 in F1.21, Season 5 F1.5 in Portugal, driving for AlphaTauri. Earlier on in that season, they got P3 in Kota. That was their last season that they competed in. We welcome them back all these years later, and on the verge of the F1.25 game coming up. Verf completes their outlap and begins the final run of qualifying. Moves to the right hand side to open up the track, brakes as hard as they possibly can, uses the curb on the inside to get some rotation on the throttle, fourth gear, and through turn 3 on the curb. DRS available, and running it down to turn 4 if they can. Turn 4, 100 meters more or less. Once again on the curb, and then bring it all the way to the outside, using that momentum to maximize track distance, or position, sorry. And then through the final few corners up the hill, next few corners up the hill. Not losing the rear end if you can. Maybe the downforce is nice and high for Verf. Maybe he's gone for a bit more of a lower downforce setup. They can afford to mix and choose in a sprint race event. They've actually turned off the battery and they'll wait to go again one more time, as we are going to get Terence, who will complete their next lap. But the pole sitter wants to have another go on this set of tyres. They will have enough time to do so. That's the beauty of going out a little bit earlier in qualifying. You can have another opportunity. We're just waiting for Peanuts to DSQ, and then we'll see the timing on our screen. 38 seconds left on the clock. Verf heads back into turn 1. A bit of grass on the right-hand side tyre, but nothing too much more than that. And then they continue. DRS, ERS, and into turn 4, really flicking the wheel in a lot harder this time, using the battery on exits through 5 and into 6 and 7. They'll go once again, pushing the car a lot harder this time, scrubbing through a bit more on the edge, and then into 8. Once again, flicking that wheel, really trying to use the techniques to get that grip on the tyre, wait for it to bite, and then getting that rotation, and into 11. 10 and 11, and then through 12, down the hill, and they'll go once again up the hill, the final major corner before we go flat out all the way to the line. DRS will be available as they pass this curb pull it to the left-hand side to minimise track distance, across the line. Verf, what will they do? It's going to be, oh, they don't improve by the tiniest of margins. Can Jericho Willis answer his rival? Terence will finish P3. It's going to be Jericho Willis across the line, bonkers to P5. The McLaren, will they compete with their rival? Will they take their first pole position of the season? They will not. They will miss out in the end. But a brilliant effort from both drivers here in qualifying. Verf set enough earlier on to give themselves the advantage, and there was not an improvement from either driver. Verf takes pole position, Jericho Willis in P2, and Terence in P3. Barrel, Bonkers, PJ, Pursuit, and Peanuts is the rest of the grid. We'll be back for the race. We will see you in a bit for the final time. Ready, hold, go! Who's going to get into turn one? Jericho Willis on the inside line trying to squirm on the throttle, but it's not going to be anywhere near. Verf, who once again gets a perfect launch. It's the Ferrari side by side with Terence. Terence going to try and have the advantage. Takes the wider line, but has the momentum and will get the job done. They've got PJ right behind, who makes the move early on Bonkers, who stays ahead of Peanuts and Pursuit. A brilliant start once again from Verf. No questions asked at all when it comes to converting that pole position into P1 in the early stages of the session. It is the soft tyre for Verf. Now, is that a mistake or is that intentional? PJ down the order after a mistake, unfortunately, in the opening lap quite early on. They do have time to get this one back in a good position, so hopefully they can do all right. But yeah, they'll be back into this race, I'm sure, a little bit later on. But that is Verf on that soft tyre. They're going to be very quick at the moment. That's Pursuit and Peanut switching positions. Now, I am very interested in this one. It could be that it is an actual choice, and this is what Verf has decided to do. They may have wanted to be on that soft tyre. They do know that they have to push really hard, but Jericho Willis has managed to hold on to get that DRS range and is going to benefit massively to that soft tyre advantage by being dragged along in the slipstream and DRS air. Now, the thing is, either it is intentional and there is a strategy call around this, because I said it is possible yesterday, although not likely. Verf can still go to the hards here. They could try and go really long and then go to the mediums anyway. But I do wonder, we were readied up and racing once again incredibly quickly compared to what we're usually used to. So it's possible, just very maybe possible, as we've got a side-by-side moment here of PJ and Peanuts as Peanuts went off the circuit just a few corners ago. It's possible that that was not intentional from Verf and they just didn't get their strategy sorted in time. So that's unfortunate. That's going to have to be looked into after the race. If that is the case, then they've got to make the best out of the bad situation. But I'll be honest, it might just be a strategy call that they're trying to make work. And at the moment, with Jericho Willis only 2 tenths behind, it's not really working, is it? It's not really working as well as they would have probably hoped. It is breaking them away from Terence quite early on, as they're able to use a lot of performance, and Jericho doesn't need to worry about pressurising Verf because they can allow this soft tyre to just use its pace wisely whilst it can in these opening laps. Currently, Jericho Willis is loving life sitting behind this Sauber, who they are holding on to quite nicely. And Terence just can't do much about it at this point. They've got Barrel for company right behind. Pursuit not quite within DRS range of the Ferrari. Bonkers 2.6 seconds behind the Alpine. They've got pressure from both of the higher tier drivers, who currently P6 at the moment. And they've just got to try and keep it cool. It's a long old race. Lap 36, sorry. We are almost on lap 4. Already on lap 3, I should say. It's pretty impressive, almost going on to lap 4. I almost said 2. Lovely. And DRS will be available for these cars. Jericho Willis will lead the Grand Prix for the first time. It's going to be a double overtake attempt. It's going to be PJ going off the circuit. PJ's likely going to have to give that one up, surely, as they go wide and they do allow the Haas driver to pass. They're going to try and then regain it, it looks like, as there was a big mistake there from Bonkers. DRS and ERS is going to be not available for PJ, so they'll have to back off and let that one be. Verf now finds themselves in P2, 3 tenths behind Jericho Willis. Maybe this soft tyre is worse than we thought. Maybe I was just absolutely in a fever dream yesterday by saying this is a somewhat possible strategy. Well, 4 tenths behind now, only losing a little bit of time through the middle sector. Terence losing a little bit of time as well to both of these cars. DRS available to Verf, and would they try and go for the overtake again? I don't know, but look at that. 7, 8 tenths. Jericho Willis is on fire. Absolutely incredible stuff. I do wonder if maybe Verf was trying to push really hard early on with this soft tyre, and then they've just hit a brick wall, and that's why Jericho is able to go as quick as they are, because all of a sudden you see that 5/10 gain. Yeah, both drivers have no battery. I think Jericho may have just used all that battery to try and do a bit of a strategy ploy and drag the car away, or try and break away from Verf, and if not, drag him away from the rest of the field, so they have a bit more of a safety margin together to have their battles that they've seemed to be doing throughout the season, apart from a very few select races. Now, 6 tenths. Verf isn't exactly that close and could be at risk at losing DRS range if Jericho has another final corner, as they just did a few moments ago. But by having that final corner, by powering on, by allowing Verf to get that really big DRS toe, you can see the gap that they've pulled to the rest of the field. Of course, Barrel and Terence have also switched positions, so they may have lost a bit of time to that. But that is a huge gain that they've just had. 7 tenths is going to bring it back down to 5. It's going to be a hell of a battle going on between the 3. It's going to be Pursuit to the inside line. As they tried to make this move work earlier on, it didn't quite happen, as they wanted to get it done in turn 4 in the sprint race. This time, turn 1 is their choice, and turn 1 is their success. It's going to be Barrel sitting behind Pursuit, actually going on the attack on the outside line. It's going to be Pursuit trying to stay ahead, and they do stay ahead of the Ferrari driver. Terence is trying to find a way through. Left, right, left. It's not going to work out in the end, and they'll have to wait behind their fellow tier runner of Barrel in front, looking to try and get another podium and continue their podium streak. They have said that, well, less drivers means a little bit less rewarding, but it's still a podium in my eyes. And now he's got a bit more competition here with Barrel to try and stay on the EU podium. Yes, currently Pursuit is in P3, but he's a higher tier driver, and it is Barrel who is in the podium position for the EU drivers at the moment. DRS for these cars. It's going to be Barrel to the inside, who pushes off Pursuit, and Pursuit doesn't get damage, it looked like, although a light tap with a barrier just completely pushed off the circuit. That was a strange one. I do wonder if maybe that was Barrel trying to brake in a straight line and then just not considering the fact the corner pulls to the left naturally. And that could be why it's very easy to do. I don't think it was intentional, but we'd have to look at the replay again. But Pursuit goes off. Now we're going to have to try and catch back up as they've lost that position to Terence and Barrel themselves. Verf and Jericho Willis continue to work together. Verf hasn't really lost any more or less time on Jericho over these last few laps. They were able to break away nicely in the early stages, and now they hold on to the back of the McLaren car for the rest of the race. It's just not ideal for their tyre situation, is it? They're going to go as long as they can, I think. It would make sense to do so. We're going to see Barrel and Terence go side by side, but not side by side. Instead, they will just switch positions and overtake one another, and that will be that done. 1.3 seconds is Pursuit away from Barrel, as Peanuts gets a 3-second time penalty in the background. It's a yellow there for PJ, unfortunately losing the car, not getting any damage, but dropping behind Bonkers. Bonkers was ahead for a bit, and now PJ's got to, behind for a bit. Bonkers is now going to try and keep PJ behind, although they are, of course, different tiers. Probably still going to go for a little bit of racing if they can, as Bonkers returns to the scene. PJ's also had a few races in and out, so it is good to see both of these guys back on track and back on the grid. Both full-time drivers back in the F1.21 game. Verf continues to do what they're doing and sticks closely behind, 3/10 behind in the end. Barrel and Terence switch positions as Pursuit is not really able to gain too much. It's Peanuts into the pit lane very early on here as they retire in the pit lane, unfortunately. That's the first retirement, but no safety car will be deployed because of that retirement in the pit lane and not out on track. A few games ago, we would say you can't retire in the pit lane because it can cause some bugs, because it did. If you retired in the pit lane, what could happen, there was a risk, was that, oh, big mistake there, big mistake from Barrel, as Terence was gaining a lot of speed and coming right up to the back of the Ferrari car, had to back off themselves, and look who's been brought back into the battle because of that one moment there. Pursuit is back into this and good to go. And yeah, as I was saying, sorry, about the games a few years ago, if you retired in the pit lane, well, you'd have really had a hard time, because it sometimes meant that you would get stuck in the pit lane, whether that be in qualifying or the race, especially when using the F2 cars for a race that we used to do back in the day, back in the 2019 game. As that is PJ and Bonkers switching positions on the DRS straight, but we're going to go back to this one. P4, will Terence try and go for the move here on the Ferrari? They'll go to the outside line and they will go through, slotting in behind us the Ferrari, switching positions. These guys are doing a DRS train lovely, really working quite nicely. It's a shame that it didn't work out with Pursuit, as Pursuit was forced off the circuit for a moment. Now Pursuit is back into this battle, and hopefully they can get in on the DRS train as well. 4.4 seconds to the top two. Verf again finds themselves at about 8/10. It's not a comfortable margin, I'll tell you that for sure, but they do gain a massive amount on that back straight, and they're really trying to make it work with these tyres. On the exit of the final main corner, that is Verf losing DRS range. Did they still manage to get it? They just about didn't. Oh no, they go into the pit lane instead, that's why. So they lost DRS range, and they thought, you know what, I've only just managed to maintain it, I might call it here. It might be time to go onto that hard tyre and go to the end. Would they try and go to the medium? It wouldn't be impossible, but it would be incredibly difficult, and I don't think it would really be sensible possible. So the hard tyre is the one to go for. They'll go for that undercut by doing this. Maybe they'll have an advantage. And however this goes here with the battles, they might be able to get in a pretty good position. There's contact once again as Barrel tries to go back to the racing line. Since doing so, going to the racing line, they're a bit slower on the apex, and Pursuit, I think, misjudged that one there. A little bit of a tap on the rear end. Terrence sits in the third spot in this train as Barrel's trying to push the car to the limits, losing the rear a little bit. We've got Bonkers and PJ close together. Bonkers goes and gets a 3-second time penalty as they are trying to follow on the Aston Martin, the race winner in LSI F1 on a few occasions. That's running on the grass there for Barrel. That's going to be a terrible, terrible run. It's going to still be DRS for the Ferrari, though. I think they just about switched it up correctly. Even though they're on the grass, they will get that DRS and go for that move once again. There's a little bit of lag going on there, it looks like. Terrence won't go for the move on the Alpine, but the Alpine isn't in a position to move back to the racing line because the Haas is sitting right behind. DRS available. Oh, a big bit of oversteer there for Pursuit, who was trying to have a go. Now goes to the inside of turn 4. Now goes to the racing line, and they continue. Pursuit happy that he's now finally in front. He's got a middle sector to try and stay in front. Whether that will work out or not, I don't know. But Pursuit is now P2 in the runnings, as it's Verf, who is 2.3 seconds behind Bonkers, who's just, behind PJ. Bonkers has just made a pit stop. I don't know if Verf and Bonkers were together at some point, but it's PJ who goes into the wall, it looked like, maybe. I'm not entirely sure, but they stay out of it. I think they've got no damage, but they're going to lose time to Bonkers, who they were close to earlier on, and it allows Verf to go straight through without any issues at all. 11 seconds to the next car. They've got clean air for days, and they'll be trying to make this severe undercut on this man, your race leader, your championship leader, and your last race winner back in Japan. And how did they win that race? Well, it was a hell of a spectacle. 10-second time penalty awarded to Verf, who tried to break it away, and they almost managed to do it. But unfortunately for Verf, it wasn't enough, and Jericho managed it to perfection with the help of his teammate as well, and still took victory in Suzuka. A couple of laps more, it maybe would have been a different story, but it is what it is, and it worked out well. Pursuit stays ahead of Terrence and Barrel. Terrence and Barrel switching positions themselves, so the Alpine stays in front for now. We'll watch on board with the Ferrari here, who is behind the two cars in front and looking hungry to try and make those moves once again. Bonkers coming out of the pit lane, 16 seconds behind PJ after PJ having that issue. Verf has made some good progress on the cars in front after they've had their battles, and he's got the better tyres. DRS available for all of these cars. It's pretty spread out, I have to say. Pursuit's done a good job to spread the cars out by putting on the burners. Barrel 7 tenths behind Terrence. Terrence has followed on nicely with Pursuit to maintain their position on track. Currently running P2 for the EU drivers. Net P3 because of Verf, of course, doing that pit stop already, and is going to be coming out somewhat ahead in a couple of laps' time. Jericho Willis, P1 at this stage of the Grand Prix, and I want to look at the gap to the leader. That's a 17.8 seconds. According to my calculations, he's going to come out about, or just under a second ahead at this point, maybe even a little bit further. 3 laps on the hard tyres, surely you're going to come out a little bit further than a second ahead right now. That might be the plan that could maybe even work here for Verf if he can really get these hard tyres working. And that is what we saw in Suzuka. This man just wasn't able to make it work on the hard tyres. They go into the pit lane to put them on, already reacting to Verf's pit stops. Pursuit stays out, and no one else behind goes into the pit lane. They'll continue. Pursuit will be leading the F1.5 EU Championship race for the first time in a long time. DRS available for Terrence, but I don't think they're going to be in a position to make an overtake. Now, I want to go back to that one. As you do see, Verf is going to clearly get ahead of Jericho Willis, and by a bit of a margin. What we saw back in Suzuka is that Jericho just didn't have that much confidence on the hard tyre, losing the car a little bit on the exit of the pit lane we saw in Suzuka as well. They were cold then, they warmed up a little bit throughout the race, but they still didn't have the confidence that Verf had. And if Verf has got that confidence on the hard tyre, regardless of having 4 lap extra wear on their compound, it just meant that it didn't matter. And it might not matter if they can continue on that trajectory unless Jericho Willis can make it work this time around. Have they learned anything? 3.3 seconds. Those tyres are still going to be a bit cold. They're going to take about a lap or so to warm up. That's what we saw from Nifo last time around. It's going to be Pursoon into the pit lane, followed by Barrel, but Terrence stays out. Almost a 10-second time penalty, it looked like, from Pursoon as he was locking the rears entering. And there is your net race leader, who is going to continue to break away from Jericho Willis. I say that, they actually haven't really broken away at all. Jericho, do they have the outright pace here? They didn't race yesterday, Verf did. Verf got some laps in, although they didn't actually finish the Grand Prix. Their first LSI F1 DNF, as they retired about 8 or 10 laps in. I can't quite remember which lap it was. And still, some experience is better than none. Jericho didn't make it to that race in the end. Now, another 2 tenths has been gained from Verf. Will they be able to continue to gain this? Will they have the advantage later on? Will Jericho be able to bring it back? I don't quite know, but maybe this difficult strategy and so-called mistake that we thought it may have been was actually intentional. And it's instead given Verf a huge advantage. It's put Jericho Willis into a false sense of security and allowed him to create this 3.4 second gap on strategy and broke him away from DRS. If that is the case, then hats off, because that's awesome. If that is the case, it's incredibly hard to pull off strategies like this in sim racing, in a 50% distance race as well. But if they can do that, well, how about that? That will be the strategy of the game cycle of the year. Terrence currently 6.8 seconds ahead of Verf, who's trying to take more and more time as they stay out another lap on track, leading the way from Pursoon and Barrel, who pitted on the previous lap. Are they going to finally make it to the pit lane? Or are they going for the soft tyres later on? Soft tyres it maybe looks like. Here for Terrence, he would have recognised how many laps Verf was able to do, and now he's going to try and see if he can bring these mediums all the way until he can get to that soft tyre. Will it still be the strategy call? I don't quite know. PJ, after their spin, 21 seconds behind Bonkers. Bonkers 16 seconds behind Barrel. Barrel actually 2.2 seconds away from Pursoon. So no one is close to each other on track after the pit stops, which can happen with the strategies. It does make it a little bit more complicated. Time penalty wise, we've got Barrel and Bonkers, the only drivers with time penalties, 3 seconds each. Easy to get time penalties around Brazil, so I don't think they should be too hard on themselves with that one. But the freshest tyres on the grid right now are Pursoon and Barrel. Of course, PJ, if you consider he's got that soft tyre, but they're going to be wearing out a lot quicker compared to these hards. Then it's Jericho, followed by Bonkers, followed by Verf, followed by Terrence, who continues out on track once again. 5.2 seconds now. Verf can almost see Terrence up in front of him, as you just saw in the background. Before Verf got over the crest of the hill, Terrence was making it through the first corner. Now we look on Verf's screen, and he will see Terrence just in the distance, entering turn 4 and exiting. No, I do, sorry. I do say sorry if I sound a little bit weird here, but I'm having an allergic reaction to hay fever. And Terence eventually gets over his allergic reaction to the pit lane. Finally goes in with 19-lap-old medium tyres. And what tyre will it be? Will it be the expected hard compound? And they're going to try and push it all the way to the end, or it is going to be that soft? And they're going to try and do 17 laps. "17 laps on a set of soft tyres is a tall order. But would you believe it, they've only come out 1.5 seconds away from Barrel, who's got a time penalty as well to their name. They don't need to worry about Pursoon. As long as they're not concerned about Jericho Willis and Verth, they're in a good position. In the meantime, Jericho Willis has lost a bit of time to Verth, as Verth has really ploughed on despite having the tyre difference. Still, it could come back later on, but right now Verth has done an absolute masterclass strategy and really brought that gap away. I'm incredibly impressed, I have to say. I don't think I can really express it into words. That is incredibly impressive on the strategy right there. Terence trying to do something even crazier with the strategy. On the soft tyre, gonna be pretty quick. Gonna be able to close in very, very quickly on Barrel. But how long will these tyres go for? Will they be quick for long? I don't quite know. PJ, of course, has gone onto that soft tyre a couple of laps ago. Not entirely sure if they're thinking they can go to the end or not. I would say not, but never say never. Depends on how you're going to treat those tyres. Now, in this middle sector, this is where Terence will have the extreme advantage compared to the hard. They'll get the grip on entry, on lateral cornering, and on traction. DRS will be available. And if they really nail these next few corners, they may even be able to get the move into turn 1. Although that would be an incredibly difficult feat to get done. So it's going to be turn 4 for Terence to try and have a go at making it P4. There is DRS. And there's the fastest lap from the man from Hong Kong. Looking very close to the grass there. DRS available, ERS being spammed. They're going to try and give it a shot, but Barrel doesn't want to allow them to go through, and rightly so. The outside line is chosen here for the Haas driver. There's once again contact, as it's going to be Barrel off. Oh, and damage to the Ferrari. They tried to pull it to the right-hand side to leave as minimal space to the Haas, and they've been bitten back by it. That's the second time that Barrel has tried to move in and give his rival the least amount of space as possible. It's a strategy, and if it works very effectively. But if it doesn't work, you get what you see on your screen right now, and unfortunately, unless I see differently on the replay, Barrel's got himself a bit of damage and can do nothing about it other than go to the pit lane and get a fresh wing and hope that they can have a bit of a comeback on Bonkers. It was worth a fight, but unfortunately it didn't work out. It didn't go in their favour. And Terence is 10 seconds ahead and now 5 seconds behind Pursoon, trying to make it work on the soft compound. Barrel going to the pit lane and come back out in a few moments' time. Bonkers looking to try and get that. Looks like no, Barrel will retire as they speed into the pit lane. A shame to see them give up, because it's not over until it's over. We could see a safety car, you never know, but it is what it is now. Bonkers will get that free position. And it will now be Bonkers sitting in P4 for the EU drivers, which is a brilliant feat. And it's good to see them still on track, getting their lap times in as they continue. It's Verth leading the way. It's another 3 second, unfortunately, for Bonkers. But Verth now 4 seconds ahead. The gap is changing. Jericho Willis is gaining. But is it going to be enough? They've got about 13 laps remaining. So, not going to be easy. That's a 3-second time penalty for the higher tier driver of Pursuit, the F1.5 EU Champion from Season 9. I may get that wrong. I think I always do get it wrong. Season 9 or 8 in the end. It is one of the two. And it is not an easy one, so we do not blame them at all. All of a sudden, as we speak, though, we say, you know what, Verf is gaining a massive amount of time. Jericho's gaining a massive amount of time, and Verf is not going to have the advantage for very long. All of a sudden, Jericho has made some sort of mistake and now finds himself 6.3 seconds behind. It was 5 seconds or so before. Now it's even more, and they're continuing to lose. I want to have a look here at Pursuit's car, because looking at the speed of this McLaren, it seems to be more of a bigger issue, and we're actually going to go and have a look and see. There's a pit stop call here from the game on the telemetry on Jericho's car. I'm wondering if that McLaren is running out of fuel. That's why they're not able to do it. With a full battery as well, they're clearly saving. They're clearly not trying to maximize the pace. So, all of a sudden, not only has the strategy gone incredibly well here for Verf, but a bit of fortune with his rival under-fueling the car and now having to try and work on the strategy to save it so they can try and finish P2. Because at the moment, they're at risk at losing that P2 and finishing P3 for the EU drivers. That would be a bit of a disastrous moment for the, I don't know how many race victories they've got this season so far, but it's a lot. And that will be Pursuit looking to try and make the move. And it is, well, effectively Jericho's best idea to actually sit behind Pursuit, try and get a bit of drag reduction with that rear wing and save a bit more fuel. You can sit behind, you can lift off the throttle, they retake the position immediately. So I'm actually incredibly confused at what's going on here then. I assume we're going to get a retirement from PJ, as they are making it around the track at the moment. We'll be down to 5 runners, because that's actually yellow. So trying to get back to the pit lane sooner rather than later. PJ's instead lost the car. It's going to give Verf quite possibly DRS, but currently an incredibly confusing situation here with Jericho Willis. I don't quite understand it. That being said, as we will see the retirement from PJ to... oh, that's not good. Stream disconnected there for a second, so I do apologise for the issues. Hopefully we're all good. I'm not entirely sure what was going on there, but we didn't seem to have any issues elsewhere. So, it's quite a strange one. It is quite a strange one. As I was saying, Jericho Willis in an incredibly confusing situation. DRS will be available as they try and bring back that gap and go for the move on Pursuit to make this DRS train work. 2/10 of a second lost overall on that last lap to the Hungarian driver in the Sauber. They gain it back on DRS slingshotting. Will Pursuit retake that position? Will they go for that move again? They will do so using the battery, and they should gain a lot of pace by doing this as they gain another 2/10 on Verf. 5.8 seconds at the moment. For Pursuit's sake, it's his best interest to stay out of the way of Jericho Willis. And currently Jericho Willis wants the DRS train. It's fastest for Jericho to do that. We're going to try and get Bonkers back into this race and hope that we can see them back in. We'll be back in a second. I do apologise for the moment away there, but we're back. And once again, the DRS train continues. And the time gain continues. Lap 29 out of 36. Jericho Willis is running out of laps to catch up to their rival. But they do have the tyre advantage. And they're trying to use the strategy in a different way. Not tyres, but just utilising the tools around you in the form of a higher tier driver. Currently, it's working quite nicely. Verf outclassed Jericho Willis with an absolutely blinding strategy. Incredible from the driver. But Jericho Willis is coming back with a late game and trying to give it a shot at bringing it back at Verf and trying to go for another victory. Not entirely sure what's going on with Bonkers, but if they don't join back within the next few laps, that will be them classed as a DSC'd car, disconnected. No points will be scored, which is a massive shame. Still, good to see them in the race and get some good laps in, and hopefully they can do well in the future races. But for now, it is what it is, and it's all about this battle here. More of a timing battle we've got on our hands now with Verf, Passoon and Jericho Willis. This man driving almost perfectly. It looked like we were questioning their strategy earlier on, but instead it's come out on top and incredibly superior. And I don't know what to say other than wow. But 5.1 seconds, the gap suddenly changed, as maybe it was still a fuel saving strategy here from Jericho to save a load of fuel, lose time to Verf, get within DRS range of Passoon, and then gain it all back anyway. And that's what they're going to see here. You see Jericho Willis go for the move, and the positions once again gained, and they'll switch again at the next available opportunity, as DRS and ERS will be available for Passoon. They're using the battery. Now, what you can see here is Passoon's got the advantage maybe in the corners, and whilst that's the case, Jericho can save a little bit and sit behind the Alpine and then use the battery down the main straight. And as Passoon doesn't need to use any battery down the main straight, he can have a lot of battery to go for it into turn 4. And they just continue doing that, lap after lap after lap. Now, time penalty range 3 seconds for Passoon, 6 seconds for Bonkers, and they still don't make it back into the lobby. So unfortunately, I think that may be Bonkers out of this one. We'll invite him again in a couple of laps' time. Or a lap's time, I should say. But right now, Verf, lap 31, starting 32, still incredibly strong. Here we go. The final laps of the Grand Prix are upon us. It's closing up. It's Jericho Willis who will lead the way into the middle sector instead on lap 32 and try their hand at going ahead. I want to have another look at this telemetry because it's interesting. We don't get a strategy call, we don't get a pit lane call from Jericho's pit box anymore. And we don't see any fuel issues. Are we seeing any fuel issues of any of the other drivers? No. No issues at all. So, we're going to have to wait to the interviews and hope that Jericho does do an interview to explain what was going on. Just gained a massive amount of time, by the way, in that middle sector. And Pursoon's going to get that DRS to retake the move and gain a huge amount of time himself as well. Do they get to the 0.6s? They do so on the exit of the corner. Will they maintain that? No, it goes down to the 0.7s and then goes back to the 0.6s, then goes to the 0.7s. And Jericho Willis is close enough to retake that move. It's going to be to the inside line, actually, as they actually back out of it and don't go for the move in the end. I think they were hoping to do so, but they didn't really have that much battery to make that train work fully. And Pursoon stays ahead. 0.7 seconds. They've overall gained... But, you know, unless Verf has some real tyre issues at this point in the Grand Prix, nothing is going to happen. Terence, on this soft tyre, I think it's fair to say this strategy didn't work. Of course, Jericho and Pursoon are in a bit of a slipstream train, which is incredibly difficult to compete when you're not part of the train. But still, 13-lap-old soft tyres is never going to be easy. They gave it their best shot, but it didn't work out in the end. Bonkers, unfortunately, not looking to finish this Grand Prix, and that will be it for them. They did score points in the sprint race at least, but that will be the end of the Haas drivers' run this evening. It's going to be Verf still ahead, no time penalties. Pursoon does have a time penalty. Bonkers with 6 seconds, although disconnected, so likely to not be classed as finished anyway. It's Pursoon the only one with that time penalty effectively, and is currently going to be finishing P3 if they stay as they are at the moment. A higher tier driver, so regardless of if they finish P2 or P3 anyway, Jericho Willis will still get that P2 for the EU drivers. Terence will get that P3 for the EU drivers. But Verf, losing about a second overall in recent times, maybe just trying to back off, maybe trying to keep it nice and calm, maybe trying to nurse these tyres and make sure that they don't run out of fuel themselves. This is where it's getting a little bit confusing, a bit interesting. 4 seconds. They've lost a lot recently, but then I don't know what happened after that. What I will say is that Pursoon was able to gain a massive amount of time compared to Jericho, and Jericho just about held on to DRS range and was able to bring it back. So I think Pursoon may have gone for a huge push there to try and gain a little bit extra lap time. I'm not entirely sure. We see Terence going to the pit lane for a fresh set of soft tyres to get that extra fastest lap point by the end of this Grand Prix to go to Haas and their driver campaign. But with the closest car to them in the championship being Verf leading the Grand Prix, they're not really going to have much of a damage limitation situation going on. They'll bring the gap from 6 points to 5 points instead, but that's still a brilliant, brilliant advantage that Verf will have. They'll gain 4 points on Jericho Willis, although Jericho is a huge amount ahead right now. It's still, everything helps. And that's Jericho Willis going in front as we start the final lap of the Grand Prix. And it will be this way regardless of whether Pursoon retakes that position or not. I don't quite know. Pursoon's probably going to try and regain the position immediately into turn 4 anyway. And they'll continue with their training situation. And now 7 points was gained by Verf in the sprint race. 8 points gained by Jericho Willis. 1 point advantage to Jericho Willis. But after this race, and we continue to see the gap fluctuate, Verf has managed to get ahead of his rival, is going to finish with a 4-point advantage to make it 3 overall for the overall event. And will gain a little bit on Jericho Willis with a masterful strategy. Absolutely awesome driving. Once again, the Hungarian driver is going to win Verf wins the Brazilian Grand Prix, and Sauber will be victorious here in Sao Paulo. Pursoon will get there in P2 on track, but P3 of time penalties. Jericho Willis will take P2, and it's going to be Terence for the fastest lap here at the end to try and make it work this time around, as they just missed out in Japan due to Brothers Cool getting that fastest lap there. Terence is going to now try and get that fastest lap to take it for themselves in the very last moments and finish this Grand Prix once again on the podium. It looked a little bit more complicated earlier on, but since the last few laps, a little bit more simpler. This guy, it was tough at the beginning, according to what I could see, but they may have thought that they had it under control the entire time. What a race from Verf. Jericho did not give up, did everything they could. Massive respect to the American to do that. But this time, it's Verf's day, and I haven't seen a strategy masterclass like that in a long time. Verf takes the victory here in Sao Paulo. It's Jericho Willis in P2, it's Bassoon in P3, Terence in P4, and disconnected was Bonkers in the end. DNFing earlier on was PJ Barrel, and Peanuts. Fastest lap goes for Terence overall. The session results are saved. The race director is on your screen now, just in case if we need it at a later point. We'll scroll back up. And then we'll go to the pit stop section. That's been it. We'll see you in a minute for the post-race interviews. Hello everyone, welcome to the post-race interviews of the Brazilian Grand Prix. That was pretty awesome there from Verf of the strategy, a brilliant strategy as well, not quite with the tyres but with the tools around him from Jericho Willis. It wasn't enough in the end, but we'll hear from him. Jericho, first of all, sprint race, absolutely awesome, taking a really nice victory there. In the main race, it looked like it was going to be advantage you, and you would have a kind of a bit of a breeze from the strategy mistake that it seemed to be from Verf. But no, it wasn't a mistake, and it was kind of impossible to make a comeback on.
Yeah, exactly. The sprint race was great. The pace was pretty good. My qualifying lap was decent, enough to be on the front row, which is good enough. And then staying with Verth was not much of an issue. Just kind of tried to set myself up to be in a decent spot on the last lap with a bunch of ERS and see what happens. And that's kind of the way it goes in Brazil. So it worked out on that one. He just about came around me. But glad there was a sprint and a main race today, so I could get a little victory out of the day. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, in the main race, I thought I thought he made a blunder, just like you mentioned, on the strategy, starting on the soft tire, and I'm still not sure why he started on the soft tire, because honestly, he could have made his strategy work on the medium tire. So yeah. I don't know.
I think it must have been some sort of mental plan to say, oh, you know what, if I start on the softs and pit early, you're not going to follow me because you think that I have to pit early. That's what I'm thinking. That's why they did it.
Yeah. I think that you're probably exactly right. And that worked. And what I should have done, instead of thinking I was going to have a nice tire offset at the end or the chance of a safety car to come out in between the pits, that I should have pit the lap after him, because I still had good pace on the mediums. Probably, I think, easily as good as his out lap, actually. So should have came right out still in the DRS, and then could have tried to conserve tires and had a 1 lap younger tires. So that was a big mistake by me. And but he did a good job. As soon as he saw that I didn't follow him in, he pushed on to try to build a gap, and he did that. And it was bigger than it should have been. Just driving around by myself, I don't think I maximized my pace, so I lost a little bit. Then I tried to work on reeling him in at the end, but the problem was it was all going to come late when his tire started to go off, and so I had to make a decision. Do I let Pursoon catch up and try to DRS trade to catch him, or do I try to catch him on my own with just a tire advantage? And as I was kind of watching the tire degradation, I really wasn't eating into his gap. So I thought, I might not be able to catch him either way, but dropping back with Pursoon, I might have a chance. And it was a gamble because I didn't know how well Pursoon would work with me, and exactly what his pace would be. His pace was good, and he worked with me quite well, but he abandoned the plan when I needed him to stay with the plan, because with like 5 or 6 laps to go was when we should have had the biggest tire difference, and that was when we theoretically should have closed right up, and he abandoned the plan, which I was like, no, not now. Who cares who comes in between the two of us, But I mean, he wanted to race and have fun, and that's fine. I knew it was a risk. It was a calculated risk, and it didn't work out. And if we worked together to the very last lap, I think we would have got close. There's no way of knowing if we would have actually caught up, because it did seem like Verse tires were starting to hit some lower pace those last few laps, but who knows? But big congratulations to him. He did a great job with whatever his strategy was. It worked. If there was a mistake, he recovered from it very well, and he just did what he does, which is really fast paced to stay out of DRS when it counts. And also to Terrence. Terrence did a really good race. I noticed he stayed out long, and he stayed out long for his payoff, which was the fastest lap of the race. So he kind of knew he had his position, Stayed out long, got on the soft tire, and got the fastest lap of the race, I believe, in the end. So congratulations to him. That was a good job and a good strategy to maximize his points for the day. So, but all in all, with the sprint and the main race, it was a lot of fun. And all these guys are really good to race with, nice and fair and clean, and it's a real pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. Well said. And I have to be honest. I don't think anybody's going to be blaming you for not pitting alongside when Verth did, because no one could have really expected that to be the case. And you did everything you could by using the cars around you to try and gain even more time. It didn't work out, but you didn't give up, and that's what matters. Mexico is the next one. DRS trains are possible. Grip levels are low around there, so tyres could actually be more of an effect, so strategy could be a crucial role again, but just in a little bit of a different way, whereas of course tyres today didn't really have enough of a difference when the tyre difference was a bit bigger, but Mexico might be a different story, I'm not entirely sure. Do you like Mexico? How's the grip for you?
Yeah, I like that track. You can get into a bit of a flow there with the design of the track, and I enjoy that. As far as what my pace will be like, I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty confident that I can't do a whole lot worse than I did last season there. So, so looking forward to maybe getting a race distance or maybe through the first corners. So it should be fun. It's a good spot, and like you said, DRS trains are plentiful there, so you get to play some games and stay in a group. And unfortunately, the last couple of weeks, the pit stop cycles have broke me away from Verth, so I got to figure out a way to sort that out. I did a lot of pit stop practice for this week at Brazil, and felt pretty good about it, but I think that the strategy was so different that it just didn't make the difference. So we'll try the same approach next time in Mexico, and hopefully adapt just a little bit better to what Verth is doing to respond, to try to hold on to that DRS train, because he consistently has 2 or 3 tenths, and if you don't stay in that DRS train, it's going to be awfully hard, even with the tire offset, to close that down. So maybe just a little more adaptable during the race, and stay in that DRS range.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. The story will continue, and we'll see what goes on there. Overall, with the sprint race event, you lost less points to Verth in the championship, only 3. You continue with your massive lead. Thank you very much, Jericho. Really, really good effort today. Really, really thank you for the action that you gave us as well on track, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
And that's been it for the post-race interviews. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure. We will see you in 2 weeks' time for the Mexican Grand Prix. We'll see you next weekend, I believe, for one of the Formula 1 Grand Prix. Actually, no, we won't. Never mind. Ignore me. We'll see you next time, whenever it is. Bye-bye.